Here.
Commissioner Bradley.
Here.
Chair Taylor.
Here.
Full house.
We are governed by the Open Meetings Act of the state of Nebraska. There's a copy of it on the table back here in case anyone is interested. We have no public comments this morning, so we'll go ahead and move to the report of our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Scott.
Good morning, folks.
Morning. Morning.
Just real quick, George, congratulations formally on the next Mr. Football win.
We got hope, so yeah.
Have you let oh no?
Don't forget that.
Well, real quick, we're going to put a decorative fence, much like we have at Evans, at Benson Power here. And Ryan starts the parking lot job. Talked to City Council President Festerson, and he's going to critique the fence, and we're excited about that process. OHA has also applied to HUD for an additional 22 batch vouchers, those veterans vouchers. We hope to utilize that funding for a project in Montville. Jennifer Taylor and I and George and Chris Peters had a meeting with the City Council's Public Safety Committee relative to some of the challenges that we face. We talked about that last meeting. Cherry, you want to say a word or two on that?
We met with the Public Safety Committee, basically explained to them, as they're well aware, some of our financial challenges with the changes in the HUD rules with cap funds and our ability to use, or no longer our ability to use those for public safety, what our budget constraints are and how that kind of is going to affect our ability to have our own police staff powers. They appreciate that. We've had ongoing conversations with OPD, so we're trying to work through the best way to manage and keep our residents and our surrounding community as safe as possible. And I think the City Council is open to ideas. We are open to ideas. We've got a number of things we're trying to figure out if we can put together maybe a collaborative effort to address this issue. But we'll continue to work with City Council, we'll continue to work with the mayor and the community to make sure that we can manage our properties and keep our residents and our surrounding community safe. Sound accurate? Okay, thank you.
Housing Authority has applied to a major fundraiser to a major fundraising organization to kickstart back up our truancy program. We'll give you some information once we announce that partnership. I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but there's some folks in this community that have recognized our success with our truancy program, so hopefully we'll get that funded in the next month or so. Also, the Housing Authority employees are going to be working with United Way on to participate in their United Way Gives campaign, and I've done this at my last Housing Authority as well in Kansas City. So it's essentially employees sign up to give for various charities that are affiliated with United Way. It's not mandatory. Two other things. We have worked with CHC to get Wi-Fi on all the sites. Alan and George are working to make that happen. So there's going to be internet access. The resident council approved that at their last meeting, so we're excited about having access to the internet towers. And Joan Anderson is going to be opening up her Section 8 waiting list when?
August 25th.
So you're probably going to get those 15,000 calls again trying to get their name on the waiting list. So we'll give you more information as that goes down. And finally, Chris Peters prepared this document relative to some of the things that we're working with OPD and their crime analysis unit, and they prepared this document. You want to talk about this real quick?
Yeah, we wanted to take a good look at our stats and things that are going on our property and around our property. The first two on this handout that we gave you is Southside and Spencer. We did a mile radius around those. The rest of it is 11 towers, and that's all within a 6-block radius of looking at the criminal and narcotics incidents versus all incidents which we track. A couple things that are really notable that stood out to me is narcotics complaints went up at almost every single property. One stayed the same for the last 2 years, and one went down slightly, but everything else almost doubled. Notice as well at Southside, the number of thefts more than doubled in the last year.
Keep in mind, folks, these are radius, mile
They're
radius
not-
in many cases, and within a 6-block radius. So these aren't just OHA related sites and facilities.
But it sure shows the area.
It's
Right.
it's striking information. That's all I have. Any comments from the board?
Chris, I just remembered, Councilman Jeremy asked for a little follow-up information. Were you able to get that to him?
As far as this?
Is this?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. When you say sexual assault, what do you think?
That's just how OPD categorizes their sexual crimes.
There's various degrees in the statutes and ordinances of sexual assault, from the very serious, which is forcible rape, to anything such as touching. So there's various. Exactly. And so I think they just lump them all together. They don't differentiate between the different degrees of the assault.
Thanks, folks.
Next item is the approval of the consent agenda. Is there anyone who has anything they'd like to move from the consent agenda? Any discussion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and second, roll call?
Commissioner Winter?
Yes.
Commissioner Bergman? Yes. Commissioner Gray?
Yes.
Commissioner Romano?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley? Commissioner Watson?
Yes.
And Chair Stewart.
Yes. Commissioner Bradley, did you?
Yes, sorry. I was talking. Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our reports and discussion items. Start with budget and finance.
I'll go ahead and take that.
Okay.
Of course, our CFO is getting down in Memphis, I think Memphis, correct? Taking some classes on our complicated public housing accounting. So Mike is down there getting smarter this week, but it's going to be a good program for him, so he can kind of get indoctrinated. A lot of us have been on the board. It's taken me almost 2 years, and I'm not sure I can still figure it out. But we're all learning, and of course, the bottom line of this is the cash keeps building. But I'll go ahead and go through. The other thing we want to point out is we've done the budget adjustments now, and this is a 6-month, at the end of June, so it's really a pretty good snapshot as to where we're at. Half the year's gone, kind of projected where we're going the balance of the year. Of course, really with Housing Authority, our income is pretty fixed, or our expenses are pretty fixed, other than a few variables with utilities and some different things along those lines. So budget-wise now, I think when we do that, we'll start the process again in September and October for the following year. Of course, we know now where our income is going to be going into next year because, legislation is set for 2 years, so we'll start on that budget process. But as we go through these now, if there's any large variance, we need to take a look at it. We know that a lot of it is management and bookkeeping and some charge between different silos of funds that we do have. But I'll go ahead and, of course, first we have the Housing Authority. Major factors here, of course, if you look at, I'm just kind of going through the summary. We're under budget, $483,000. And if you can look through the favorable, of course, we've done a very good job of managing some of our maintenance and starting to get our arms around that idea, and then we do have, right now, Cliff, you may want to explain this a little bit on this capital thing.
Yeah, I know you guys, if you can see this public housing year-to-date net income before non-cash activity, year-to-date it's $170,693 negative. We're going to be drawing down our about $600,000 in capital fund money that's going to make this positive. So we're in a very good position at this point in time with respect to this cost center and our cash. So I know this looks like a negative, but we just haven't gotten the money yet, which we anticipate here in the next, hopefully by the end of the month, so.
Right. So that'll, and we're actually predicting really through the end of the year, we'll be in a positive position. I think we're doing a pretty good job of watching the overhead, and administrative expenses are up, but we know that the first 6 months, some of those were up, and to finish out the balance of the year, those should come more back in play because we've adjusted that budget. So, but like I say, year-to-date through June, we are down $170,693. And of course, we had budgeted $312, but we've done some different adjustments and different things, and we feel pretty comfortable with all that. We go next to the Section 8, and of course, as you can see, for June 2014, we should show net income of $9,685. We budgeted basically to lose $1,400. So, and of course, year-to-date, this is where we're, you know, it says major factors. You know, year-to-date, we're $807,000 favorable. And it says favorable, but one of the things we need to understand, we do have an obligation to spend that money. We can't just sit and build up reserves in this area. So we've got some things earmarked, and we've got to look to spend this money. And of course, it's our revenue. If you look at top line revenue, you know, we're up substantially there, 579,000. And then our HAP expenses are under budget, 367. So, I mean, basic business, our income's up and expenses down, so we're building cash in that area, but we've got to look at some other things. Then the Section 8 administration, and of course we manage this basically to kind of break even for the year. You can see budget-wise, we've actually showed that there would be a loss here, but our revenues are higher than we had projected initially October of last year. And so our revenues are up substantially, and our expenses are pretty much holding the line, and we're showing a $25,000 profit for the month of June. Year-to-date is $57,891, and we'll manage that out through the balance of the year. And this Section 8 housing, of course, will basically break even.
Can I ask you a question about the voucher program, favorable variance? Does the issuance of vouchers whittle away the variance?
It costs money.
It does, yeah.
And we went for a year without issuing. But now on the backside of that, because it's what, a year and a half average, a year average of your, it'll eventually hit us next year where some of your revenues may drop.
So when we open, the Section 8 program opens August 25th?
Waiting list.
The waiting list.
The waiting list.
So when we open the waiting list, we add more names to the waiting list. Some names on the waiting list fall off. We actually place people through the program, and then that decreases the variance.
We issue vouchers. Once we open the waiting list, we get about 700 people, and then we try to issue as many vouchers as we can relative to how much money we have in reserve. Once we issue those vouchers, then those folks can go out and find a unit. It costs us about $550 per unit per month with every person that we issue a voucher to. So in this Section 8 admin, we have about $797,000 in reserve. We need to spend that money by the end of the year.
But in the admin, that's for managing the
No,
program?
I'm talking about on the, just on the rental assistance side. Every time we issue a voucher, we get an administrative fee, and it's about $43 per month every time we issue and there's a contract signed. So the more vouchers we issue, the more money we spend, correspondingly, the more administrative revenue we receive.
I was just trying to see, could I convert the $807,000 into vouchers? How many more vouchers that could be?
You can, based on what your average per unit cost is for each voucher. So yeah, you can. It's about $545, which,
Per month?
yeah,
But
per
it's my
person
understanding
per month.
from Mr. Bradley, some of that reserve is technically maybe earmarked vouchers we've already issued. Okay.
Yeah,
It's somewhat complicated because, it's one Section 8 program, but it's an administrative portion and it's a rental assistance portion. If you're not spending the money on a rental assistance portion, you're not going to receive the admin money. And then there's,
So they kind of work hand in hand.
They work very much hand in hand. This is a tough program. It really is from a financial end, and also, as Joe said, from the regulatory side.
It's a balancing act, there's no question.
Extremely tough, because as a councilman will tell you, he gets people who get a voucher and they can't find a unit anywhere in the community because of the perception or past history with private landlords. So sometimes it takes a family 60, 90, 120 days to actually find a unit for them to sign a contract.
So some of that favorable balance is actually earmarked for people who are holding vouchers.
This is correct.
Walking around with a voucher.
In their hand.
And that's a huge challenge in this community. Landlords, private landlords, allowing folks to gain access to their units. And we hope that land bank legislation that was passed on Tuesday helps in that respect, because it will hopefully weed out some of those problematic landlords. But we won't see the effects of that probably for about 18 months.
That would be optimistic.
When I say that, I say that from personal experience. Landlords, and you guys are business people, most of you probably owned property before. Depending on how bad your unit is, you make the determination, okay, can I re-rent it, make the investment to re-rent, or let it go? In this community, unfortunately, folks have said, all right, I'm going to put a minimal investment in my bad unit and see if I can rent it. And fortunately, because folks who still really want to live in North Omaha will take that unit. This land bank legislation, I believe, will tell a potential landlord who has that real bad unit, I'm just going to let it go. And we hope that it improves access, for low-income folks to go to other areas. I just don't know, I can't quantify how long that's going to take for that private landlord to say, well, let the city have it. That's really the only way I think in the private rental market that we're going to improve the living conditions of the folks.
We've already heard from a few that want to donate to the land bank. You have to keep in mind also that, I sit on the Land Realization Commission too. That body is going to go away, and there's an inventory there. So there's an inventory of properties.
That automatically passes.
Yeah, they will automatically pass over a period of time. That process will move to the land bank over a period, I would say, about 4 months, 5 months.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if we can get the land bank up and operational at the beginning of 2015, we'd love to have it ready to go for the first tax certificate sale in the beginning of March. And then I would imagine as that process is happening, there's also the process to look at Land Realization Commission and how that gets absorbed. It's got a lot of work to do with writing policies and procedures on how it accepts property, how it disposes of property, who it disposes to, what it can be used for, all the strategy basically. It'd be a very long process with the board as they work through that.
We anticipate
Or
probably.
intensive process.
Yeah, it'll be intense, and it'll be a minute, but I think optimistically that we'll be ready for the tax sale. But to your comments, we've already heard from a couple of landlords, and see, we've got a number of people in the community as well who have been given property as a gift, and they're too infirm to whatever to manage it, and because they have been asking quite a bit about how do I deed this over to the city and those sorts of things. So I think just by the passage of the legislation, I think people realize that we're going to move on this. And but as Jamie said, it's going to be a fairly slow process. We've got to do policies and procedures and all of that, get that in place first. But I think your comments are right on. I think you're right. I think we're going to see that in the years to come, but it's going to be a good piece.
Thank you, Jamie, Councilman Gray, for all of their efforts in getting that done.
We work hard.
Hopefully that explains it. And this whole Section 8 is, Joan and her staff do an outstanding job. I have a question. Is Douglas County Housing Authority, we've taken over their issues. Are they going to start their waiting list again?
That I can't answer. I haven't heard that they're getting ready to
I just it's a
advertise.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would imagine that HUD will not allow them to issue vouchers for now to the end of the year,
Okay.
just because they're not really sure what the funding environment is going to be for them from now to the end of the year. So they'll probably take the same approach, in fact, that they had us take last year. Just my sense.
Yeah, all right. Okay, we've gone through the Section 8 and then the administration and let's see. Then, of course, our central office cost center, as you can see for the month of June there, shows $364,000. And then year to date, we're at $575. Now here again, we're favorable, almost $400,000. And of course, our revenues are up $281,000 over what we budgeted. Administrative expenses are under budget, and then we've spent that money in some other areas, but we're building up cash in this area also. And so overall, the cost center is operating very efficiently and is building up cash in that area also. Now the insurance, we've adjusted that budget, so when you look at that over budget of $60,000, that should average out because it's an accrual type situation on that insurance. So we've now got the budget set correctly and we know where we're headed there. Housing in Omaha, of course, is, we've taken a look at this over the last couple of years and we've continued to improve. Our gross revenues are down a little bit under budget, and really for the month, we should be close to that 110 to 115,000. So our revenues were down a little bit. We're still showing cash flow of 18,000. We budgeted only to be at 4. Year to date, we're at 25, and we budgeted 25 roughly. So pretty much on track. Our vacancy is up and down a little bit. We've had some vacancies over the first 6 months, which caused that revenue to be down just a touch. But housing in Omaha, the cash flows seem to be continuing to build. We've got some more properties coming off.
We've got, I think, 2 coming out this year.
That we won't have to pay taxes on any longer. So that just continues to improve our cash flow there. We still, as housing in Omaha, need to sit down and really take a look at our assets and make some decisions in the future here on those assets.
And that's something we can, Brian and Nicole, they listed a discussion item for our August meeting. We're having an August meeting. Yes, definitely. So we are meeting in August. So why don't you put that on as a discussion item for Ohio in August to make sure we just at least have an initial conversation with Brian about where we're going to go or how we. And I know we're waiting for the P&A, but.
Well, P&A, unfortunately, didn't cover it.
Okay, so then we
Oh,
need to
didn't
talk
it?
about how.
Okay.
We go to public housing?
Just for public housing.
Oh, okay.
Then we need
So we
to.
do our own.
Yeah.
Let's put that at least as a discussion.
And then, of course, Cliff addressed the capital funds issue with our 20% capital funds. So the next few pages do have the detail. If there's any questions from any of the board or commissioners on any of that, we go ahead and address that. But like I say, for the first 6 months, our budget's adjusted now, so we should be pretty much on track. Michael and I sat down and went through most of those, and so we feel very comfortable with our budget items. And like I say, we'll start that process again in September and October, so we get those budgets out to you ahead of time. But we know what our revenues pretty much are going to be going into 2015 already, so that helps us. The next thing we do have is accounts payable. It shows a little over $600,000. We do have a couple big items in there. The one big one that I did see was to $165,000 to Mackey Construction. That's paying for parking lot. So that's a big number. As you can see, our utilities are still running $180,000 a month between OPPD and NED. But everything is current. Our cash flows, we're paying our bills. We're doing a much better job of managing the cash. And,
We did have a conversation with the finance committee, and I looked, and it looks like they had one of procurement as well about plumbing. And We're going to, I think, continue to see
Cliff
rising.
brought that up.
Yeah, rising plumbing costs, if there's 25,000 in Fitland, due to the aged nature of our plumbing in a number of our properties, and that's going to have to be something we give some long-term consideration to, because that's not an easy fix.
Did the analysis address that, or the?
I'm sure to come up in the B&R.
Oh, yeah, it'll.
All right, and then, it's not in here, but one of the things that I watch closely is our cash, and our cash balances at the end of the month were, you know, 8 to 8.5 million, so if you look at a year ago, well, it's on the balance sheet, I guess. If you look at the balance sheet, the cash is starting to build there, so we're sitting on cash, but we still have some challenges with our different silos of cash, so. We're on top of that. I think Michael's come a long ways. It's like I say, it's a very complicated system, and we're learning a lot from that. So I think that pretty much handles the financials. And Chairman, if there's any other questions, I'd address it. If not, I think we can move on.
Any questions, comments, discussion on financials? Now we'll move on to asset management.
Good morning.
Just Susan today.
Yes, this is well, you have our report in front of you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. We have half our properties, we're 98% or higher. We did go over with our managers the first 6 months of the year, the occupancy and where we're at, and so that all of the properties are looking to improve their occupancy the last 6 months of the year, so we can average out at 98 or higher occupancy for all the properties. Some of them will be a little challenging, but they're working on it.
And then the Operations Committee intends to meet next month, and a couple of things that we'll go over, and I think you know this is that I wanted to have that committee have a conversation with you guys about work order process, vacancies, occupancy, how that's managed, how that's the oversight on that, and just give a basic rundown to that committee and just get maybe a better understanding of how that's managed.
Terrence and I are prepared.
Yeah, so for the board's edification, Operations Committee will be having a good conversation with staff about that at our committee convention. There's any questions, comments on asset management? Not. Move on to housing choice voucher. Joan, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. You have my monthly report. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. I just wanted to add a few more comments in reference to our waiting list. The reason we're opening the waiting list is because during the month of July and August, we will have completed our current waiting list. We are scheduled by the end of July to bring in 200 families to offer them assistance. And then also, during the month of August, we'll be bringing in 126 families. So once we do that, our waiting list will be at 0. Last Friday, we did have 100 families scheduled in to receive vouchers. And I believe only 68 showed for those that we did issue vouchers to. The reason for that is because a lot of families, they have bad debts, and we just have to wait till they get those bad debts paid in order to issue. And then some families didn't show, so we have to give them a second opportunity, so we'll be bringing them in this coming Friday. So we have another 100 families scheduled for tomorrow to issue vouchers to also.
Has our waiting list ever gone to 0?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. What we usually do, we usually well, we didn't bring anyone in last year, naturally, because
Right.
we
Oh,
couldn't
that's-
issue.
that's
So
right.
what we normally do, we try to open our waiting list at least twice a year and bring in each time 750 families. We have them scheduled. But as you know, we have to withdraw maybe 200 because of criminal backgrounds and because of over income and things like that.
With our vetting process.
Be a busy day in general shop tomorrow. Any further comments?
Anybody wants to stop by and help?
Any further comments or discussions on Section 8? HIO, as I mentioned, did not meet in July. We will meet next month, and we'll be discussing properties and financials and all kinds of things, HIO. So we'll move on to capital improvements and construction. Mr. Durant.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just give you a quick update. The PCA, basically still under review, but there are some concerns with its completeness. I think they're still missing details. And so I actually had a conference call today. It was supposed to be yesterday, but he canceled on me, so it's this afternoon at 2 o'clock to go through those items that are still, because we gave him a scope of work of essentially everything that we needed provided, and that's actually was issued by HUD. So, I mean, can't really veer from that because HUD expects those items to be in that PCA. It's apparent that there's still quite a few things missing, so we're trying to give them the benefit that this is their first time doing a bad PCA. But it's also been a little frustrating on our end because it's pretty black and white of what it is required, and they're just not giving us all the details, like just simple things like, they're giving us green options and they're not comparing costs, to non-green things, because that's all part of what the scope of work actually requires. So just lots of little things that it seems like they're not getting in the report yet. So, and Cliff has been working with the actual owner CEO, so hopefully we can get him in the right direction. If not, we're going to have to probably figure out another alternative.
So we hate to have to do their job.
We're going to get this up, folks.
Yeah.
We're
But
gonna call it.
I also hate to have to start over.
Yeah, and unfortunately they were on the ground and had the data. I'm just not quite sure. Unfortunately, the guy that's doing it has never done a PCA, is what he tells me, and so I'm supposed to, give him some slack. But at this point, I've given the point where I'm done giving you slack. So either do it or, I'm gonna have to move on. So we'll know something within the next week if we have to move on or whatever. And we'll let you know. So.
Is it possible that if we didn't move on, we could take the data?
I'm hoping that
We should
I'm
own it.
pretty sure.
We own that data.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's our data, it's not data.
So
So if we didn't have to go somewhere else, we'd at least we don't have to start over.
that's what we've been talking with the RAD transaction manager, and we've submitted to her, and she's obviously had her own comments. And so one of the comments is the data. Get the data. We could probably turn this around with another group that's done these. And I actually asked HUD if they would actually provide me with the RAD PCA that actually got approved. Unfortunately, she wouldn't share that with me because she said it was proprietary, but I said, well, I'd really like to see a completed one just because it is all new to everybody and just see exactly what they're looking for. But I asked. So. The next thing, parking lots. Florence is done, Pine is done, and Highland, they're still working on. It's been a little bit of a challenge there, but hopefully I saw the latest schedule, and he's got to tear out a couple of panels that he put in last week and redo those, and hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Fortunate that we had additional land at Highland, so we actually didn't have to close the stop parking. We'll wait for the new parking before we close down the old parking. So hasn't been as big a concern there, but Pine, I was there yesterday, walking around, and it's all completely looks real good. Residents seem to be happy. So,
It's amazing what a fresh parking lot does.
it does. It does
It's
a
just
lot
like, wow.
in the landscaping. So, we'll keep on those contractors because I noticed that Pine with the heat and stuff, some of that landscaping's already not. And we have a year warranty, but it's like they need to keep on the watering to make sure that stuff actually flourishes and gives it a chance. So. Benson is out for bid again, so we'll probably have that for the next board meeting for approval. Housing in Omaha, I sent an email. I got an email earlier this week. So Chandler Place, which has been a conversation for a number of months, I think we're all aware that the real estate taxes are just absolutely crazy. It's 30% of the annual expenses, and construction costs, unfortunately, we had to switch contractors, and construction costs went up, which was not a real surprise. If you look around Omaha, there's people everywhere.
It's high right now, as I've heard.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Commercial
So
construction.
it's obviously, it's hurting the budget, and so something has to give. And unfortunately, when you build stuff these days, there's a lot of standards and so much stone that you got to have in your buildings, and those things cost money. Well, if we can't get any relief on the taxes, unfortunately, it's going to be tough. And I know the CEO from CGI is actually working with Sarpy County to try to get some kind of relief there. But we're still just trying to work on it. It's challenging, so we're hoping that we can get some kind of relief from either the construction side, which I'm not real optimistic on that. It's more or less likely has to either come some kind of other funding or real estate tax exemption or relief at least. So I'll keep you up to date on that moving forward.
Just one comment, I mean, we sit in these board meetings and we deal with other people with OHA and we really don't know some of their outside activities. Well, I've been spending some time around Omaha calling on different entities and nonprofits and that type of thing. But I just do want to point out that Ryan is involved with NIFA, does a very nice job. Very complimentary NIFA about what Ryan, what a big thing he pulls in there, and then he's part of the continuum of care here in Omaha. And those people really appreciate what you do. And it's great to hear when you're out in the community hearing what, you know, the staff here at OHA does. And so it was pretty rewarding for me.
Thank you.
It's always proud to say you're an OHA commissioner.
They're saying nice things.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
At Underwood, when it rains, the drain, the water just sits there.
Yeah.
Can that be checked or something?
Yeah, the contractor actually, I'm gonna make him go back out there and restart the parking lot because the line's already missing and it's not even used, so that frustrates me. So I'm gonna have the contractor go back out there and take a look at that.
The drain?
Unfortunately, here's what I have, it's not necessarily maybe not a contractor because it was engineered that way for a reason because of where that kind of pulls up. If you notice, it does drain, it just takes a very long time to drain because of that right there. And so it goes down and the neighbor, like, the water has to go somewhere. They don't want it to go to the street, so
But it sits there.
it sits there for a while and it drains very slow,
Yeah.
very slow.
Is it like a drainage swale, like a natural
Yeah.
solution for
Yeah.
water runoff?
Bugs,
Yeah,
mosquitoes.
yeah, no, I know exactly the point you're talking about, and it's a very slow draining location.
We
I'll
thought
have,
maybe it was stopped up or something.
no, it was designed that way unfortunately just to keep the water from our parking lot hitting the street and going down to the neighborhood, because usually that's the last thing we want is the neighbors getting all the parking lot water from our so.
But they park on it anyway.
I was hoping the new parking, you know,
No.
no, but I'll address, I'll verify that, but I mean, it was all surveyed and stuff, and it was supposed to be, and it was designed that way for a reason. I know it's very slow, and if it continues to be a problem, we'll have to look at it again, but I do want to have them restart that parking lot, because I know it's the parking lot goes straight for the so.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know if there's sitting water out there
Yeah.
for mosquitoes, there are little misses you can toss in there. They'll actually kill mosquitoes and eggs in standing water. So maybe if the site manager had a store of those, every time it sits out there, you can toss one in.
Okay.
I used to use it for our backyard pump.
Okay.
Just trying to help.
Wistful hints from Jennifer.
I do what I can. Okay, anything else from Mr. Durant? Now we'll move on to procurement.
Morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Got my monthly report. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Any comments or discussion on procurement? Now we'll move on to human resources. Cliff?
We had a number of positions that we needed to fill in public housing, which we did. We had one voluntary termination and two involuntary. And we still have general shop and public housing intake has positions that they need to fill. So one of the things that is important is, I was talking to one about this the other day, is retention and making sure that we provide a good, decent wage for our employees. That's one of the things that we're, with our salary study, that we're going to hope to accomplish with the results of that. So anybody had any questions?
questions or comments on human resources?
Well, I was just going to say, as we go into the budgeting cycle, when does the finance committee start working on that before it actually comes to us as a?
Well, we start in September.
Okay.
We'd like to get September's numbers done, so you've got 9 months historical, but budget, we know what our revenues are going to be next year already.
Yep.
So it's massaging those expenses, looking at what biggest variables are salary, utilities, and it's guessing that we got enough historical data. Of course, we've got a lot of big projects going into next year, but a lot of that's capital funds, so you'll have that. But we try to have that by October, review it November, and of course, either pass it in November or December and get it done before the year ends.
So then through the individual committees, there's suggestions as it relates to any of the different areas, just encouraging through that committee, so.
But what they do internally too is each department creates their own budget and then it all pulls together and then goes to Michael and we pull it all together.
On the staffing, what does the human resources coordinator do?
Human Resources Coordinator assists our Director of Human Resources in doing background checks and facilitating the hiring process. We review our benefits plan, and it's an administrative position.
Is it a new position?
No.
Most of these are replacements.
All of them.
Okay.
None of them are new. No, we're not trying to increase our headcount if we don't have to.
Any further comment or discussion on human resources?
Much to everybody in this room Can we move on?
Yes. Family and Community Services. I see Mr. Osaka is not here today.
Yeah, George, you want to take this?
Yeah, you guys have spoken for you. I've talked to Sal, and one of the main primary focus right now is trying to get that children's program back up and running. The old funding source is right up, and we're going to go back to some of that group that funded that original program. And so we've met with one of the individuals, and we've also got a grant application into another community foundation to hopefully allow us to get that up. So that's kind of the primary focus of that. The summer program is going very well. As we've driven back in summer Jackson Tower, I think you've seen some of those kids they're doing very good work in terms of helping the youth get to process. Some of our fathers and mothers probably speak to some of that. So South Shop is going to be heading up some of that.
I was in here the other day and football's about ready to roll, right?
Yeah, I'm fired up about that.
Football's ready to roll. Katie's working on that. We had to go to a new league this year, so it's kind of a transition for us. It's going to be a transition for everybody because I think this new league is very much more organized, very much more formal.
It's a national organization, so we have a lot more
rules, regulations, things that we're going to have to follow just because of that league. So I think it's going to be an important year for us, but I think it's going to be fun.
What did you tell me? He's going to have 120 kids?
It dwindles down relative to participation, but he starts off with that kind of,
I was
those
shocked. That was large.
We also had a meeting with the folks at OPD, or OPS, to the athletic folks. We're going to piggyback on their procurement capabilities, so hopefully some of that equipment that we fund will be cheaper going forward.
We look Bob there now, who runs the OPS athletic, the head.
Everybody knows Bob.
Yeah, and Bob is very, Bob has done an excellent job in OPS. I'm not sure much as a prep guy. It made OPS much more competitive in sports than it ever used to be because he designed a system where that OPS never really had in terms of football and basketball. And he's allowing us to use some of his coaches, and he's allowing us to use some of his facilities if need be, and potentially also some of his contracts. But of course, being a large agency that purchases millions of dollars worth of property, their company, so it's going to allow us to put flag back onto that
Central High alum, I take a little offense at the statement that OPS is not competitive to, I think you've taken prep to Woodshed more than a few times.
I don't know, we can count the numbers. At the end of the day, I think I'm gonna still get ahead.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to update, and we had a meeting with the Sudanese Somali Bantu group this past Saturday. We met at a church, and it took almost a half hour to find and prepare you. We met at a church. We had a really good turnout of families from the Somali Bantu group, from the South Sudanese group. We had one of the precinct captains from the police department there. Had a couple of our city folks that were there as well. We continued our discussions. We're developing a plan, especially for South Side. We're talking about that plan now. We've got a couple of things in place. I got another conversation I got to have with the police chief. I think we're moving in a direction that some of the families and others will take ownership as well.
That's key.
Because our police department is really stretched. And it's going to be key. And you're right, Commissioner Brown. The families have got to have ownership. And they've got to understand. They've got to understand customs. A lot of us talking about customs and what we expect and what they should be doing. It was a really good session because a lot of the families were asking what kind of signs they should be looking for with their young people. And so it worked out into a really good session. It was relatively longer than I wanted to be there, but the fact of the matter is it was really good. It really turned out to be a good session. And we'll be following up. I know Sal wanted to be informed. I was hoping he'd be here today, but Sal has been on this as well. So I thought this would be a good place to do the update. But we're continuing to move with that. We've got another meeting scheduled, and I'll let you all know when it is. We haven't actually set the date yet, but because we wanted to get some information back from the police department and that should be coming in about a week or so. And then we'll schedule another meeting, and I'll let you know the executive director know. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. And as soon as that came up, just reminds me that, there was the op-ed piece in the Herald over the weekend about Southside.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, I've heard both positive and optimistic, looking forward to actually undertaking that process. I've heard a lot of people who are supportive of that and want to assist us in that process. So I think it's a good thing. No further discussion on family community services. Move on to public safety. Ms. Peters?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
You have before you my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We've already gone over the stats that we handed out, so if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
No further discussion on public safety. We'll move on to legal. George?
We're going in the right direction for the most part.
That's a lot shorter.
We're down to 2 pages?
Yeah,
One-
2 pages.
3/4.
And only 5 on litigation.
Work yourself out of a job.
We're working ourselves. Which is always a good thing in this area.
Yes.
The item number 1, hopefully that will come to an end at the end of this month. The Court of Appeals affirmed the district court's decision on the survey of furnace. And so that, I believe, will probably end that matter. And then item number 5, OHA is one there, so hopefully both of these will be dropped off this report in August. Pending some type of appeal, either one of those decisions. And I'm assuming number 5 is probably going to be here as well. So 2, 3, and 4, the remaining litigation items, and 3 being the only one that is going to require a sensitive amount of work here on 4 without that. The next page, discrimination claims we got going. We did not have any new discrimination claims last month. So that's always a good thing. And then we got the eviction report in June and July. And I'll take any questions regarding those.
I'm looking at the June non-payment cases and noticing that most of them are in the 500s to $1,000 range. Except for the bottom, $18,269 for Margie Clark. What is that?
Susan? Susan, is that yours or Terry?
It's mine, it's at Southside.
Okay. How is it?
What happened?
Well, the resident was under the impression that she was going to be able to make some payment arrangements on it, but the amount just got too high and no payments were being made.
How long would something like that take to accrue? Like, how long was it that we were trying to work with her? It seems I've tried to watch this over the months to kind of see and understand what our amounts are.
I believe it was close to a couple of years.
So did that just kind of fall through the cracks of the asset manager missing that someone was living there for 3 years without paying rent?
Well, it would be the zoning manager.
Okay.
This is clearly an anomaly. You know, we try to look at this on at the very least a quarterly basis to you know, figure out our receivables. There's no excuse to this. We don't, and I have never even saw this either. This is pretty egregious. So we'll
Well, let's make that part of our conversation
we'll make sure
operation.
this never happens again.
Yeah, I think we need to have something around
This is pretty,
Nicole?
this is pretty egregious.
As far as rights now, just stay free.
I've never seen amounts that high.
Yeah, well, I guess it's an opportunity for us to figure out a sounder policy and performance measure system to make sure that that kind of stuff isn't happening.
You know, I chalk this up as us trying to be really transparent.
So that, no, I think it's great.
18,000, that's,
That's a good,
you know, I would have told you guys to hide that one. With all due respect.
and I see it's listed as restitution, so. is
There's a
that-
restitution. It eventually came to light that what happened, and, you know, we had several discussions with the resident on the legal side about how this occurred, and try to resolve it. It clearly was, she took advantage of the situation, and OHA clearly dropped the ball. And,
Is this individual still living in housing?
no, we evicted her. So when you see this report, this was an eviction.
The other is restitution.
So we,
And she wouldn't be eligible to come back to housing until she paid off that?
she
or
would not be eligible to go anywhere else in the country until she pays off that balance, which is probably never gonna happen. Which is the sad part of it.
Okay.
I do want to make a comment, of course, being a banker and always collect bad debts. I think we've done an outstanding job. Julie and Rivers had a recovery of almost $80,000 this year.
We got
That's well above previous years. Of course, February was a home run. but,
Income tax time. It
Yeah.
always helps.
Yes. When you say 3-day notice and the 3 days are up, how does that work?
3-day notice to start the legal process, where essentially is OHA as the landlord sends notice to the resident indicating this is how we believe that you violated your lease, and we're asking you to leave within this 3-day time frame. If you leave within that 3-day time frame, you don't file suit. But if you do not leave within that 3-day time frame, then you've got to go to the next legal step, which is actually asking the judge to give the evidence if you want to test that matter, and to give us the right to go in and change the locks. So the 3-day notice, that's all it is. It's just putting you on notice that if you leave within the 3 days, we wouldn't file the action. If you don't leave within the 3 days, then we file the action and ask the judge to give us the legal.
How many more days will that take?
The way it works is, I would say in our system, it's probably the 3-day, if it's criminal, it takes a little bit of time just because, actually from the time we serve the 3 days to the time you go to court, it's probably going to be 21 to 28 days. Just that's how the process works.
They have to pay the rent?
The 3 days in Nebraska, for us, where this is an anomaly for us, in that in the private market, the 3 days is for non-payment of rent. For us, 14 days is where we have to serve the residents for non-payment of rent. The 3 days usually for criminal violations or other significant lease violations. It's really weird. And you know, some new judges always get it messed up because they figure that we have to serve a 3 day non-payment of rent. only the private market does a 3-day for non-payment of rent. We have to do a 14-day rent by federal law for non-payment of rent. So that even stretches out the process longer of a non-payment of rent for us because ours is a 14-day as opposed to a 3-day.
So while all this is going on, they can still stay.
That's the tough thing about being a landlord is while the legal process is still going on, they can still stay in that property. You cannot do anything.
Hands are tied.
Your hands are tied.
And that's why it's important for us to, we've undertaken the sensitivity issues, trying to find residents who are more capable of long-term payments and continue to stay in their units. The turnover or non-payment it hurts our bottom line a lot. It's important that we work on getting tenants in the unit that are capable of continuing to pay.
And non-violent.
Yes.
That's good.
Anything else from Mr. Chola? Besides McKinney, congratulations.
Yes.
We have no information items or no new business. And I don't think we have, unless anyone wants to discuss something legal or something, we have no need for executive session.
Madam Chair, do we have any updates on the negotiations? Or
Yeah,
because I don't want.
I won't give you the details, but negotiations are ongoing. I think we've made some progress. We had a meeting with them about a week and a half ago. There were a couple issues that we thought might be a lot of gems. I asked yesterday, they talked to us and they come back with a comment that I think is a step in the right direction. I think hopefully moving things forward. So we've got another meeting scheduled with them on the 6th of August, and I'm thinking if things work out well, I think we should have such type of deal there that day or shortly thereafter. At least the principal until
Before we schedule an executive session for next month, just in case we're at that point, so the board can get a review of what the proposal is and what you all suggest.
And then that's retro back to the first year.
For this going to be, right now on the table is potentially 2 years ago. So
2 year.
14 will be
That'd be
retro. Yeah.
No further, I will.
Motion adjourned.
Second?
All right. Vote in second, roll call.
Commissioner Whitaker?
Yes.
Commissioner Berglund? Yes. Commissioner Brett?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradley?
Yes.
Commissioner Romano?
Yes.
Commissioner Watson?
Yes.
And Chair Taylor?
Yes. Thank you all very much, as always, for your time.